Yeah, I was going to say, I think Kenja talked about it earlier about like communing with God in the projects, in the relationships, and knowing. I just think about like God knows that He has given us certain responsibilities, and in doing so, we are to steward those well. So for me, I think that means seeking direction. Like I think Dean said, Lord, how would you have me steward this? Like it doesn't always look like um, spending time with God doesn't always look like the prayer time that is consecrated. I think it looks like being present with the Lord in the day to day responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
going back to what Tony said, like the grace of God is what we rely on. It's not like my perform. I know I've been under the bondage of like, oh, if I don't spend an hour with, I'm single, don't have kids. What? I need to be spending time with God diligently. And some of my most like sweetest conversations with the Lord has been in my commute in my car to work, and just like,
Yeah.
oh, thank you for being with me, God. Like just really allowing Him to be my counselor. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
And that's so powerful because I think that, that that's what Drew was saying as well. And, one of the things, I think I talked about this on our Thursday Bible study. We have this idea that God comes first. And for me, I think God is central, right? So when I look at, okay, God comes first, it's like, okay, I can spend the time with God in the morning, which is good. But then it's like God is kind of siloed off on a checklist. He's a checklist. All right, did that today. Now, the rest of my day is whatever. But when it's God is central, I think the balancing that comes to a mindset is that even though you're working, even though you're taking care of your kids, even though you're doing this and that, your mind is still with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so the balance is being with the Lord, walking in the Spirit, having your mind set on Him in the midst of doing the things that are required in life, the responsibilities that we have to do. Yeah. Right. And when you live like that, God is not first, He's central, because everything you're doing is being filtered through the lens of God. How do you want me to do this? How do you want me to live? What builds your kingdom? What is that? Rather than, God just being something that has to be done every day. Like I have to do my chores. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a relationship. Yeah. More so than like a job. It can feel like a job where it's like God is a job. And when you operate maybe that way, it's like God is it's a more of a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you guys made some fantastic points, and I agree with that 100%. And I think that's what I was thinking earlier, Charles, when you first brought up that question of how do you tie or marry those two verses,
yeah.
Working hard, but then also committing what you do to the Lord, or working as if you're working for the Lord. And I think the way you tie that in, like you said, is what you think. When you first brought that up, my first thought was your motivation, your intention. Yeah. It's like, what is your motivation as you are doing these things? And so for everything you may not, what I can say is my struggle is depending on like if I'm working and I'm reading about like, microbiology or whatever, it's like, how do I tie God into that, with in my thoughts? So in those times, I still need to like figure that out, or pray that God helps me to commit that kind of work to Him or those tasks. But then what I do realize is that if we're spending time with other people, like I notice that some of the best time that I feel like I am spending with God is when I'm talking to other people about God. Like if I'm talking on the phone with my mom, sometimes we have such amazing conversations where we just like get goosebumps, and we are just, I get off the phone and my spirit is uplifted. I am ready to keep talking about God, Yeah. And then another thing that it made me think of, there's something my dad used to do that I absolutely loved. When I was a kid, my dad used to read us the story of Jesus on the boat. But we begged him to tell us this story so many times that he had it memorized. He would act it out. He would like do voices, and it would crack us up. And we begged him every day to tell us that story. And I think, in the future, when we have kids, we may not be able to commit every single action and task to God. But if we pray that God helps us to find ways to tie that in, I think not only will it be fruitful in our relationships, but we'll feel like we are committed with God in those ways.
Yeah.